When the world faces upheaval, when war breaks out, when energy and food supplies are interrupted, we must zero in on what matters most at home and on what we control. We work for Canada and its people. Here is our home. We want this country to be affordable at home, safe at home, and strong at home, so that we can be unbreakable abroad. Put in more academic terms, we must put Canada's national interest first and foremost as we look at this war and what it means and where we stand. On travaille pour le Canada et pour les...
We work for Canada and Canadians here because we want an affordable Canada, a safe Canada, and a strong Canada. That's how we want to become masters of our realm, and that's how we want to defend our values internationally.
Present war in the Middle East. So let us start with the regime itself. This is the most prolific terrorist regime in the world, a regime that routinely murders, harasses, and intimidates Canadians. The regime killed 55 Canadian citizens and 30 permanent residents when it fired a missile, an unprovoked missile, at a passenger plane, PS 752, for which there has been no subsequent justice by the regime. Further, let me chronicle the unprovoked aggressions this regime has taken against our country. In 2023, a year-long global news investigation found that there are 700 regime-backed agents operating on Canadian soil for the purposes of intimidating and threatening dissidents who fled the regime. Victims' families and Canadians protesting the regime have reported harassment and surveillance on Canadian soil, according to the RCMP, which has received numerous reports of foreign interference by the Islamic Republic of Iran. In 2024, 2 Canadians were indicted in the U.S. for their role in an alleged murder-for-hire plot on behalf of Iranian intelligence. In 2024 also, agents of Iran attempted to assassinate former Canadian Justice Minister Irwin Cotler. According to a CSIS report in 2024, the regime is, quote, one of the main perpetrators of foreign interference and espionage in Canada. CSIS assesses that Iran will continue to use proxies such as individuals involved in transnational crime networks when its perceived enemies are active in other countries. According to CSIS, as late as 2023, Iran-aligned cyber actors such as the IRGC-linked Cyber Avengers have been targeting Western critical infrastructure, including, and this is important, healthcare and public health, government and information technology, and engineering sectors. In other words, attempting to mess with our technological capability to deliver healthcare to our people through foreign attacks on our cyber networks. The Hague Commission lists Iran as, quote, a considerable transnational threat because it is likely monitoring, influencing, collecting information on, harassing, and intimidating Iranian diaspora community to prevent criticism of Iran. And the National Security Committee found that Iran is one of the primary perpetrators of repression against ethno-cultural communities in Canada. This list only chronicles the direct harm the regime has done to Canada itself. Forget that this regime is the single biggest sponsor of terrorism in the world, that it orchestrated the attacks of October 7th, that it has killed countless of its own citizens, including 30,000 in the last month alone. All of these moral atrocities only compound the regime, the evil that the regime has done to our country. In other words, it is in our national interest for this regime to be defeated and replaced by the Iranian people with a peaceful democracy. We need strong leadership that takes a stand, maintains that stand, stays consistent at home and abroad, and shows up in this House of Commons to do what is right and speak for the Canadian people. And that is what we do here today. We as Conservatives make it clear that it is in our national interest that the regime in Iran, which has infiltrated our country, murdered at least 55 of our citizens, and harassed countless others, be removed. And that is why I supported the Prime Minister's initial support of the U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. Since that time, he has flipped and flopped more than 4 times, having 4 contradictory positions in as many days. First, he said he was for the attack. Then he regretted his support for the attack. Then he said that his support for the attack was illegal under international law. And then he said he would consider sending troops for the attack, which he supported but regretted supporting, and then said that was illegal under international law. Mr. Speaker, his party says one thing to one group and the opposite to another, confusing our allies and dividing Canadians. Some of the Prime Minister's own Liberal MPs have said in the newspaper today, and I quote, "What the hell?" when it comes to his stance on the war in the Middle East. And now he has gone into hiding, having failed to speak a single word in tonight's debate. In this time of crisis, Canadians deserve to know where the Prime Minister stands. Indeed, they deserve to know where the Prime Minister is. C'est une crise de sécurité, de l'abordabilité.
We are now in an international war, and the Prime Minister has already changed his mind 4 times. He needs to speak before the House of Commons, before Canadians, instead of hiding. Where is the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker?
We have been unclear and unwavering. Conservatives support the right of the Iranian people to remove their terrorist regime, a regime that has murdered countless Canadians and targets our people on our soil, in order to bring forth a peaceful democracy in Iran. We must turn our attention, though, to our own country. What does this war mean for Canada? First, we must be safe at home. Canada has become more dangerous under this Liberal government. There have always been wars in the Middle East, but they've never spilled onto Canadian streets. But after 10 years of Liberal immigration, Liberal catch-and-release laws, Liberal incompetence, we are seeing violence and terrorism normalized in Canada. Synagogues shot, dissidents targeted, a regime officials using our country as a safe haven. As of February 5th, only one of the 28 individuals identified by CBSA as illegal foreign regime officials has been kicked out. And that does not take into account that, according to Global News, there have been as many as 700 of these regime terrorist-linked officials who are making Canada their personal hotel. Why has the Prime Minister not moved to have these people deported from our country? This Prime Minister has not made any changes to the criminal code to kick the terrorists out, lock the criminals up, or stop new ones from coming in. We need a plan to deport all of the regime officials. They need to be identified, they need to be arrested, and they need to be deported. There is no room for IRGC or Iranian regime officials in our country. Pick them out. We need to ensure that Canada is safe for its Persian and Jewish communities, and a real action plan to protect synagogues and other places of worship that have come under attack. This government has failed to keep Jews and Persians and other Canadians safe in this country. Enough is enough. We are a very welcoming people, but we will not put up with foreign wars and other forms of terrorism spilling onto our streets. This is Canada, and every Canadian has the right to feel safe living in this country. We must be affordable at home. Oil prices are spiking due to the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz, which transits about a fifth of the globe's oil. Now, the government cannot control global oil prices, but it can control domestic taxes and policies allowing domestic production. This Prime Minister has brought in a new tax, the fuel standard tax, and has blocked domestic production of our oil. We need a plan to unlock affordable energy, not only to supply ourselves, but the entire world. Repealing anti-energy laws like C-69, C-48, the industrial carbon tax, to unblock and unlock our resources, shipping them off our coasts in order to fuel our friends and power our paychecks. In this way, we can both make the country more affordable and more autonomous, and that must be our mission. We work for Canada. That is our job in this place. We must be a country that is affordable at home, safe at home, and strong at home, so that we can be unbreakable abroad. Nous devrions être...
We must be affordable at home, safe at home, and strong at home, so that we can defend our interests, Mr. Speaker. We are here for Canadians.
Country and our people. Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Nature. Mr. Speaker, today we are debating a very important situation. The Honourable Opposition Leader has spoken about threats to Canadians and about the risk of terrorism at home. I'm a new member, but since I've got here, we've been talking about giving the Canadian government access to classified information so that could play a strategic role on this front. I understand that up till now, the Honourable Opposition Leader has not accepted a security clearance. He is not going to get one. Is he planning to obtain his security clearance and get involved? Is he willing to know everything there is to know about these issues? The Honourable Opposition Leader, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister gave the right answer to that question a few days ago. The media asked him a question about foreign interference here in Canada. He said that he was unable to respond because he has had classified briefings that prevent him from speaking freely. I will not be muzzled. I want to keep my freedom of expression as leader of the opposition. The opposition leader should be able to express themselves. They should not allow any government to prevent them from doing their job and from talking about foreign interference and how to protect Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Sherwood Forest, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, I come from the Edmonton region where so many families continue to grieve the losses that came when the IRGC shot down Flight PS752. Over 50 Canadian citizens were murdered that day, many with connections to my region. The regime promptly bulldozed the crash site and even harassed the relatives of victims who spoke out. When so many Canadians are murdered, this is an attack on us, on our people, on our nation, on our home. Now, some members of this House seem to have forgotten these events, forgotten the attacks on our country and our people, the continuing attacks on our country through foreign interference that underline the justification for and the need for this response. Now, I know the Leader of the Opposition has engaged directly with Flight PS752 families, so I wonder if he can speak to those conversations and what we can do specifically to deliver justice and solace for these Canadian victims of this regime.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, and thank you to that member for leading the charge to achieve justice for the families of the victims of this terrorist attack directed at Canadians. These were our people. 55 Canadian citizens, 30 permanent residents, mercilessly killed by a missile targeting a passenger plane, and then their remains bulldozed by the regime, which has done nothing to bring justice to those who fired that missile. That was an attack on every single Canadian. Yet it took 4 years after that attack for this Liberal government to even list the IRGC, which fired the missile, as a terrorist entity, allowing this group to walk and operate freely on Canadian soil, terrorizing our people. To this day, this Liberal government and this Liberal Prime Minister refuse to deport the terrorist officials that are known to be on our soil. We must kick them out, we must seize their assets, and we must bring justice for the Canadian victims of this regime.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the Opposition Leader for his speech. He said that Iranians should determine their own future. I agree with that statement. 150%. I really hope to see that come to pass. In the same breath, though, he said that he supported the American offensive in Iran. And he 100% supports President Trump's offensive. But President Trump himself had said that following the offensive, he wants to have a role in choosing the next leader of Iran. That's what he said. So, does the opposition leader understand that this topic takes nuance? It's a complex subject. And by 100% supporting the U.S.-Israeli offensive, he is de facto supporting President Trump choosing the next leader of Iran. What does he have to say to that? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. No, Mr. Speaker, that is not true. I support the Iranian people and their right to choose their own government. That is why I agreed with the Prime Minister when he spoke out in favor of this principle. Now we don't know what the Prime Minister's opinion is, nor do we know where he is. We are currently talking about the specific location, about a certain member. That is not allowed. You're allowed to talk about the person's position on an issue, but not their position geographically. The Honourable Opposition Leader may continue. Well, that is why I agreed initially, though I'm not sure whether Liberal MPs agree with their own leader. As for the bloc question, the bloc member said that he wants Iranians to be able to choose their next president and government. But how can this happen without getting rid of the current regime? Does he truly believe that the dictators will suddenly just shrug their shoulders and hand power back to the people voluntarily? This is a terrorist regime. They need to be kicked out.
The Honourable Member for Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I address this question to the Leader of the Official Opposition with some trepidation because it's information I have from friends within the Vancouver area, also like me associated with the Anglican Church, and very concerned that some members of the Iranian National Guard may be obtaining baptismal certificates to hide their real background and intentions in this country. I second his call that we absolutely look for any members of the Iranian National Guard who are masquerading as real refugees, and wanted to ask him if he's heard similar concerns.
And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, and that is an excellent question from the Honourable Member. In fact, we are getting anecdotes all the time from the Persian community. They're seeing former senior police. There's a police chief from Tehran who was spotted in a Richmond Hill gym, working out, enjoying himself, enjoying all the plunder that he and his friends stole from the Iranian people. All over parts of the GTA and the lower mainland of British Columbia, the Persian community will tell you they see known members of the regime living in mansions, enjoying the good life here with all the money that they stole from the people of Iran. They are not citizens. They are not permanent residents. They are easy to identify. It's time for the government to arrest these monsters and kick them out of Canada for good.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recognizing the very serious nature of what's happening in the Middle East, the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs made it very clear in terms of the government's actual position on what's taking place. It seems to me that the Conservatives have this motivation to try to portray misinformation to Canadians when, in fact, the government is actually being clear. Does the Leader of the Official Opposition recognize that the Conservative Party of Canada does have a role to play, and providing misinformation at times does more harm to a very serious issue that we're having to face today in the Middle East?
Let's try and be brief at this point because there's not a lot of time left in this particular segment. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member seems to suggest that we are misrepresenting the position of the Liberal Prime Minister on this conflict. My question is, which position?
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. I have a very simple question for the Opposition Leader. On day one, the Prime Minister supported the Conservatives' current position. They supported the U.S.-Israeli offensive. But does the Opposition Leader not think that if he were Prime Minister, he would have consulted his allies before coming out with a remark like this? Would he not have spoken to France and Germany and Norway, countries that have spoken with nuance, noting that they did not necessarily support the offensive because they believed in international law? Would the Opposition Leader have stuck with European allies or unilaterally supported Donald Trump's offensive? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Neither the one nor the other. Sure, we would have consulted our allies, but we do not work on behalf of foreign governments, nor not those in Washington, not those in European capitals, no foreign government. We work for Canadians. The Iranian regime has killed Canadians. It launched a missile that killed 55 Canadian citizens as well as 30 Canadian permanent residents. The regime continues to harass Canadian citizens. They sponsor terrorism on our soil. For this reason, we will act to support Canadian interests as well as the freedom of the Iranian people. Resuming debate, the honourable member for Beloeil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to quote an adage, quite an old one. Those who are absent are always wrong. Today, this adage takes on a very specific connotation. I would hope that together we can hear reason on this issue. We could, the people can judge whether some people should have been present and who they would be. Such presence would have helped to reassure and clarify. This is a role associated with a certain government position. Six months ago, we were told that Iran had been deprived of its nuclear capacity. President Trump boasted in his usual nuance-filled way that this had taken place. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump has rained down hellfire upon Iran. We can all return to certain fundamental principles that we all agree on. The Iranian nuclear program always had to be dismantled. Iran's terroristic, oppressive regime that was terrible for women has to be dismantled. We all stand against the Iranian regime's sponsorship of international terrorism. While our objectives are clear, the methods in which they are accomplished can be debated. I am not sure that international institutions, a guardrail against reckless behavior by global leaders, ought to be written off so cavalierly. Is it considered normal these days not to consult our allies? Is it normal that we were not consulted by the country that was once our greatest ally? And is it normal that all of a sudden the government comes out in favor of the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran with no conditions? Is it then normal to see the Prime Minister shifting his position? Suddenly he cared about international law. Then he said that Canada would not become involved in the conflict. Then he said that maybe Canada would become involved in the conflict depending on the conditions. Just today, the government has seemed to undergo a late in the day conversion. He's saying that Canada was not consulted and never expressed agreement with these strikes. It's not just us who are interested in the government's position. Canada is a NATO country and a G7 country. I'm sure lots of people had some questions about what the government had to say. Now, the Prime Minister is going crisscrossing the world to sign trade agreements, or not trade agreements, but vague agreements. Nothing in those agreements will change the economic realities of Canada or Quebec in the next few years. It seems that the government is taking the same approach on the Iran issue. He announces military spending without being able to put his money where his mouth is. Canada will not be a major military power anytime soon. In Davos, the Prime Minister spoke about cooperation between middle powers. 2 days later, he came to an agreement with the Middle Kingdom. Did he talk to China about middle powers? It seems that the Prime Minister's position is a very confused one. Look at the effects of the Prime Minister's leadership here in Quebec and Canada. Look at the effects of the war. The war will change lives here. We have people who are struggling given the tariff crisis and who have been struggling for a year now. We have a trade war so serious that we freak out when the President of the United States even picks up the phone when the Prime Minister calls. That makes headlines these days. We have the threat of a recession on the horizon. And now, today, the price of a barrel of oil has skyrocketed, leading to obvious short-term inflation that could lead us right into a recession. The effects of the war are significant. Purchasing power for the most vulnerable will decline. Interest rates will go up. People will lose their jobs, lose access to home ownership. These are the threats we are facing. And we have seen short-term government interventions to preserve purchasing power, for example, purchasing power of seniors. We've seen efforts to inure Canada against trade wars. We've seen efforts to increase productivity, all short-term efforts. We are dealing with another monstrous deficit, and nothing can prevent this. Deficits seem to be the trademark of this Liberal government. Deficits without measures that truly support people.
If this war continues and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as a result, will continue, and this will complicate things for Canada, and once again, it will be the most vulnerable who will pay the price. So I call on the Prime Minister to have a clear plan to take care of our people, of the people. So Canada is waiting to hear what he has to say. Same applies to Quebec. But the Prime Minister has to do three things: restart the negotiations on the tariffs and the trade relationship, deploy short-term measures to meet the needs of people in our economy, and stay steadfast and collaborate with other middle powers to save a maximum number of human lives. Human lives are at stake because this is a war and not a TV show. And in war, Mr. Speaker, people die. Thank you. Questions and comments?
Member for okay. Cowichan, Malahat, Langford. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over 100,000 Canadians are caught in the growing crisis in the Middle East, and they deserve more than vague assurances and than last-minute contingency planning. As the threat from the Iranian regime escalated, the government